I remember that day like it was yesterday, even though that was well over 15 years ago now. There was Mike, who I'd known since I was in elementary school. I think we met whenever we were in first grade at Jones Street Elementary. And then there was Jimmy, our other best friend. Mike and I both became friends with Jimmy when we were freshmen in high school. I remember he moved from Maryland. His family, his dad was in the Army. Anyway, Mike was always a big practical joker. He was the class clown, and I was kind of introverted. Jimmy was kind of like me, but I don't know, I guess he was kind of a mixture of me and Mike. He was a little more extroverted. Anyway, I looked up to those guys, and they were my best friends, you know. And I still get emotional when I think back to that day. That's the day that kind of changed everything. I mean, I moved on from it since then, but it's something I'll never forget. Anyway, Mike had this idea, along with Jimmy. They came up with this plan to go rob this house that an elderly couple had lived in and died in, supposedly a couple months before. The house had always looked creepy. It was on the other end of town, the other, side of town. No one ever really went there. It wasn't really a dangerous neighborhood, but it was just kind of a place you didn't go because they didn't have anything there. It was just all industrial and old factories and old distilleries that had been abandoned like 30 years before. Apparently the two elderly people who had passed away in the house, they were very wealthy. So Mike and Jimmy were like, hey, let's just go look around there. We might find something in there worth a lot of money. It'll be fun. It's safe because nobody's there. Nobody will see us on the street. Nobody lives in those houses anymore. The house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, and that was true. They were right about that. There were a couple other houses there, but they had been abandoned for even longer than the house we were planning on breaking into. There had been other houses there in the past, but they were demolished, and there was nothing new rebuilt. Nobody wanted to live in that area of town. So one day, cloudy day, I remember it was raining, we decided to do it. Mike had been drinking all day. He was on the hard stuff, already at that age, drinking vodka. And Jimmy and I tried to get him to sober up a little bit, but it seemed like nothing really worked. He loved to drink. I'm not saying like I was sober back then. I would drink beer and stuff with him, but Mike was starting to go off the rails a little bit, but we thought maybe he'd grow out of it at some point, hopefully, because he was a smart guy. Anyway, I remember that moment we finally made it to the neighborhood. We made it to the end of the street. We walked down the street, and it was dark, it was quiet. There was like one street light that was functioning barely. I mean, it was flickering. It was like something out of a horror movie, but I thought at the time, oh, it's no big deal. It makes it more fun and exciting, like a stupid kid would think. I wasn't even a kid back then. I was in my early 20s, but still, I was immature to even go along with this stupid plan. So it happened like this. We walked down the street. We looked at the house from the front. Yeah, it looked dark and creepy. I mean, even whenever the couple had been living there, whenever we'd pass by the house, we'd sometimes ride by on our bicycles when we were younger and be like, God, that place looks so creepy, There would be stories about the people who lived there, like the woman was supposedly a witch, which I knew that was total nonsense at the time. But you never really saw them outside. Occasionally you'd see the guy taking out trash or something when you passed by over the years. That was maybe like 2 or 3 times, my whole life that I saw him outside. And I never saw the lady. I never saw his wife. But yeah, they'd both died apparently of natural causes a couple months before we went in the house. Anyway, we went around the backyard because we tried the front door. It was locked. Windows were locked. Back door was locked too, but we found a window that went down in the basement. I remember Mike talking about how this guy was apparently like heir to some oil baron. He has a ton of money, even though he lived in this house. He just kept all his money. He never spent it. He was a hoarder. He had so much valuable stuff in here. Probably got suitcases full of cash too. They might not have found whenever they took the bodies out. So it was just a stupid plan, man. And window was open. One of the windows we tried. So Mike went in first, then Jimmy. I went in last, and I remember landing down on the concrete in the basement floor and just this dust, coming up. It's like nobody had stepped foot in that basement in decades. But it wasn't the dust that bothered me, it was the smell, man. It smelled horrible. It was like, you ever smell like something rotting? It was like that times 100. I mean, imagine that like multiplied by 1,000. It was a horrible smell. I was like, dude, let's get out of here. This stinks in here. This is horrible. Mike's like, no, come on. We just got here, man. We're not going back now. Jimmy was kind of quiet. He glanced back at me like that. He was like, I could tell he's probably thinking the same thing as me, but he was excited too, so we didn't want to like quit while we were right there, Might as well see what the place has, right? Anyway, we looked around the basement for a while, didn't really see anything. It was packed with boxes and stuff, and Mike was opening it with a Swiss Army knife and seeing if there was anything in it, but it was just old books and files and stuff and old trinkets. I don't know what any of that stuff was, if any of it was worth anything. We went up the steps to the main level of the house, the first floor. The door was open, of course, going on into the living room and everything, and the dining room, and man, it was so creepy. I just got chills down my spine when I stepped into that place. Like, it smelled so horrible, even worse up there than it did down in the basement. And I started to think to myself, did they remove the bodies? I mean, I didn't know anything about the situation, their death. I don't know if it was in the papers or anything. I was relying on what Mike was telling me. He said this old couple died a couple months ago. That's when we heard footsteps on the second floor. I freaked out immediately. I turned and went back down to the basement, and I felt Jimmy grabbing me from behind, or I thought it was Jimmy. This seemed to happen so quickly, because when I turned back, I remember feeling my heart stop when I saw an old man with a big beard just grabbing me. He jerked me back up into the house. I don't know how much time had passed. It seemed like whenever we entered that house, everything just started to kind of stand still. I don't know where it came from. I thought the sound of the footsteps was from upstairs in the second floor, so I thought we'd have time to get back down in the basement and escape, because we were right just in the living room, at the time on the first floor. Sorry about that. I'm getting kind of emotional just like remembering this. What happened then was he threw me into the living room, and I saw Mike and Jimmy were already lying there. There was a woman holding a gun on them. Old woman, silvery hair, down to her, like all the way down to her knees, man. The guy says to us, "What are you doing in this house?" We just tried to, we said we were just looking around, we're just stupid kids. We were totally self-deprecating at that moment, like trying to tell them, oh, we're sorry, we'll leave now. We thought nobody lived here, we were just messing around. That's when I heard the gunshot go off. I looked down at Mike, and I don't even want to remember what that looked like. Jimmy jumped up and took off. The woman grabbed him. She was so fast. I heard him screaming. I felt the guy grabbing me around the throat. I don't know what came over me, but I knew that I was not going to die in that house. I guess I headbutted the guy, as hard as I could. Felt blood coming down my forehead and my eyes, and I don't know if it was his blood or my blood, but I took off for the basement door, but I guess he had locked it after pulling me out of the, from the steps and throwing me into the living room. So it wouldn't open, so I ran. I took off upstairs into the house on the second floor. I went into some bedroom. I don't know if it was their main bedroom or what. The house was pretty big. It was really, really old, built like over 100 years ago at that time. I saw multiple bodies all over the floor, scattered there. Some of them were really heavily decomposed. Some of them were literally skeletons. Some of them were not very decomposed at all. There must have been like 10 bodies or something. So I don't know. I guess it was some room where they kept people. I don't know what happened to Jimmy that day. I managed to bust out through the window after I heard the guy's footsteps stomping up the steps. Man, I just jumped. I jumped. I sprained my left ankle. It still hasn't healed completely to this day because the way I rolled it, I remember it swelled up like a softball, but it didn't stop me. It didn't stop me at all, man. I was so scared. I kept running through the pain, and it hurt like hell. But anyway, I just kept running. I kept running, and yeah, I got out of there. First thing I did, of course, after talking to my parents, I mean, I was like a blubbering mess of tears. I was crying my eyes out. Like, I had never felt so much regret in my life for doing something like that. I was a good kid. I never did stupid stuff like that. And if it made it even worse, I wasn't even a kid anymore. I would like graduated college, and I knew better than that to go snooping around in a place like that, and told the police. Cops went to the house. They couldn't find anything there. They couldn't even find evidence of Mike having been killed. They couldn't find his DNA or anything. They acted like I was crazy, but Mike was never seen again. Of course, because I know what happened. I watched him when he was dead. He was lying there on the ground dead. She'd shot him. They said nobody had lived in the house. They said the elderly couple, just like Mike had said, they died 2 months before. Bodies were taken out. No funeral because they didn't have any family. You know the craziest thing? I showed him exactly the path. We went in the basement, up the steps to the living room where they held us captive for a couple minutes or 30 seconds. I don't know how much time had passed. It all went by like it was a horrible nightmare. I showed him the path. I went up the steps to the second floor. I took him into the bedroom. Window was still busted, so I mean, it was evidence that I was there, but there were no bodies anywhere. I still haven't got back to normal after that, over 15 years ago. I spent 2 years after that in a psychiatric facility, and sometimes I do think I maybe went crazy that day. I don't know what happened to Jimmy. He was never seen again either. I didn't see him get shot. I didn't see him die, but I saw that lady grab him with the long silvery hair that went down to her knees, and I can never forget the look on her face. I can never forget the look on that old man's face when he grabbed me on the stairs going down into the basement and dragged me back up. Sometimes I wonder maybe I was just imagining all of it. Like they said, the police, I remember they were laughing at me after that. I mean, at first they took me seriously, and so did my parents, because I saw how hysterical I was. I was crying my eyes out. I miss those guys so much, but I try not to think about them that much anymore because of that night. Yeah, we thought we were going to just mess around, do something stupid, and then that happened, or from what the police say, it didn't happen. But I was there. I know it happened. I don't know what those people were. I don't know if they were human. I don't know if they were spirits. I don't know, but I know that I saw my friend, my best friend, down on the ground dead. I know I saw that woman grabbing Jimmy. And then the next thing I know, I'm just flying up the stairs, man. I'm just fight or flight mode, trying to get the heck out of there. And that smell on the second floor was even worse. The further up you went, from the basement to the ground floor to the second floor, and then I saw what it was. I saw all the bodies there, and I don't know I don't know how to explain it. When we went back, everything was gone. The boxes were still there in the basement. Everything normal was there. Everything normal. The house looked abandoned. The furniture was still there, but there was no sign of Mike, no sign of Jimmy, no sign of two old people that lived there. Those people had been dead 2 months, and they were gone, buried, no funeral, or cremated, whatever. I don't know what happened to the bodies, but I'm telling you, they were there. We were all there together, and then something happened, something I can't explain. And it's something something I'll never forget, and this is the first time I've really told the story. I mean, I've told it to people I know, but they think I'm crazy, so I try not to talk about it too much. But in some ways, I've kind of been able to move on from it. Other ways, it's something that it's going to stick with you forever, if you go through something like that. So